Southern among those who've reported disruption. CrowdStrike CEO says it's not related to a security incident or cyber attack. A woman believed to be from Sudan has drowned after an overcrowded migrant boat got into trouble in the English Channel overnight. 5 people were pulled from the water and a further 86 others rescued by a French patrol vessel at around 1 o'clock this morning. They were all taken to Calais. A spokesperson for Number 10 says the incident underlines the stark reality of how dangerous the crossings are. Police made several arrests after violent disorder broke out in a Leeds suburb last night, with more expected in the coming days. Vehicles were set ablaze and a police car overturned late last night, with residents warned to stay indoors as helicopters and a large police presence responded to the chaos. It's understood the riots were linked to local children being taken into care. In the US, Donald Trump pledged to bring back the American dream as he took to the stage last night to formally accept the Republican nomination for president. Speaking at the Republican National Convention for the first time since he narrowly avoided an assassination attempt, the former president struck a unifying tone, promising to lead for all Americans. Meanwhile, President Joe Biden has accused his Republican rival, Donald Trump, of having a dark vision for America. The US president also said he looked forward to returning to the campaign trail next week and winning at the ballot box in November. It comes as 7 more fellow Democrats in Congress urged him to end his campaign, fearing that it could cost the party dearly in the November 5th election. Meanwhile, Barack Obama has reportedly told senior Democrats that he's concerned over Joe Biden's ability to win the election. The former president is understood to have told colleagues that Mr. Biden's path to victory has greatly diminished. And health alerts are in place across the country as the summer sun brings welcome relief for some. Experts are urging people to take precautions, with warnings in place in many parts of England until 11 o'clock tomorrow night. Today has officially been the hottest day of the year so far, with a temperature of 31.9 degrees recorded at St James's Park in central London. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophia Wensler, more in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome to Lee Anderson's Real World. Tonight I'm delighted to be joined by the very lovely Emma Webb, soon to be married Emma Webb, and we've got 2 left in the corners this week. I'm very fortunate my old friend, one of my best friends in politics, Matthew Stadlin, political commentator, and former Labour MP Bill Rammell, he's back. Both lefties in the corner. Straight to it today, guys. We've seen some horrific scenes this week over the pond with Donald Trump, an assassination attempt. I keep looking at it over and over again, and I saw some 3D graphics last night where you could actually see the trajectory of the bullets travelling towards him and how his head tilted at the very last millisecond. If it had not tilted his head, he'd have been dead now. Matthew, what's the world coming to?
No, it's an appalling event and should be universally and totally condemned by everyone, no matter what your politics.
Yeah. Emma?
Unfortunately, it hasn't seemed to have been as forthrightly condemned by some people on the left. I think that the reaction, of course, there have been some people who have come out and condemned it, but there have been some people who I think have reacted in a way that they wouldn't have reacted if it had been somebody that they agreed with who had just faced an assassination attempt. I mean, there was one commentator who was even mocking the man who was in the audience who'd been shot. So I think a lot of people have said that as you mentioned, that footage where they actually map with maybe they're using AI or something to map the moment that he turns his head, and you can see just how much this sort of was on a knife edge. That many people have been saying that they think that America has just narrowly avoided civil war, and it's what for me I think really is possibly not being as discussed as much is, yes, the assassination attempt is a threat to democracy, and a lot of the people who are not being as as outspoken against it are the same people who would jibber jabber about insurrection.
Yeah,
but on the other hand, you also, I think, an important aspect of this for America is that it's already been the case that if you go to a Trump rally, you might have your livelihood destroyed. But now if you go to a Trump rally, you might be having to put your life on the line. And I think that has an extraordinarily profound effect.
Let me just bring Bill in, because Bill's wanted to chip in. Bill, you've travelled the world as a minister, as a member of Parliament. Did you ever feel in danger in different parts of the world?
I mean, going to places like Iraq and Afghanistan, you had protection officers with you. And actually, that's one... I think this was shocking, outrageous, and I don't think any figure on the left in this country has not condemned it. But I think there's some serious questions for the American security services.
Yeah.
I mean, I heard that story, that they weren't on the roof where the guy was shooting from because it had a slope, and they'd be at risk. For God's sake, the security services are supposed to...
Bill, you know a little bit about this. Where were the drones, the helicopters, and machinery like that? Why wasn't it there?
I think there are all sorts of legitimate questions. I think there's going to be an investigation on the Hill, and I think the director of the security services, her tenure is at risk.
It was a spectacular failure, of course it was. I'd just like to come back, if I may, to one or two of the things that Emma said. More than one thing can be true at the same time. And it's absolutely true that that assassination attempt was a threat to democracy, and America came within millimetres, and as Emma said, a turn of the head from a very, very serious situation, potentially. And also Donald Trump came very, very close to losing his life, which would have been absolutely horrific. It is also true at the same time, because we are in the middle of a very important election campaign, presidential election campaign in America, that some of the things that Donald Trump has said in the past are also threatening to democracy. And I'll give you two very quick examples. One was encouraging his supporters to march on the Capitol, which preceded the appalling scenes that I'm sure you would condemn, Lee, the insurrection of January the 6th. Yep. And the second was, and this is bound up with the first, was to reject the democratic process when he lost to Biden last time. That is a clear and present danger to democracy.
Okay.
Let me just quickly finish. I'll just quickly finish, because I want to compare... Let me compare it to what's...
Emma, I want to come to you now. It seems that Matthew's sort of justifying this action by them comments. That's what it sounds like to me.
No, not in the slightest. That's not what I said, Lee. I said two things could be true at the same time.
You've had to say, Matthew.
I don't think he's justifying it, but I do think that he's missing the point, because the point is about hypocrisy, and it's about the way that the left have one rule for themselves and one rule for others. And particularly when you've had people comparing Donald Trump to Hitler and his followers to Nazis, of course, you can, I'm not saying that, I'm effectively just trying to point out that on the left, they would regard that as being...
Let's just clear that up. So I'm going to bring Bill in now, Emma, because it was David Lammy you're talking about. He described Trump as a woman-hating, neo-Nazi, sympathising sociopath. He's also a profound threat to the international order. Is this the sort of language you would have used, Bill, when you was working over in that place?
No, and but there's all sorts of people who've made legitimate criticisms of Donald Trump, and I think it is true that what happened, the attempt on his life, was appalling. But at the same time, he is a threat to democracy, and he'd be a threat to world stability. His views on NATO, his views about Ukraine, I think are very dangerous. So I think he needs to be defeated in the election. It pains me to say it, for that to happen, Joe Biden needs to stand down as the candidate. I've always been a fan of Joe's, but what the debate and recent weeks have exposed, he's vulnerable, he's frail. We need a better candidate up against Trump.
Matthew.
Just to come back in first, let's be completely clear. I didn't come anywhere close to justifying the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. I've decried it immediately. The first thing I said on this show is absolutely outrageous. Anyone who equivocates about that is part of the problem. So that's the first thing. I would never describe Donald Trump in the terms that his own running mate, J.D. Vance, is alleged to have described him. J.D. Vance said in a message to a friend, allegedly, that he oscillated between thinking that Trump was some sort of necessary figure and potentially America's Hitler. Now, that is not language I would ever use about Donald Trump. What I would say, and what I would repeat, is that what he said in the process of denying the election result when he lost to Biden was threatening to democracy. And I think the way in which your former colleagues, many of your former colleagues in the Tory party, handed over power after their humiliating defeat at the hands of Labour's landslide was an excellent example of how democracy should be done. They did it with dignity, and I would praise Rishi Sunak, your former boss, and other senior Tories for the way they did that, and that is a lesson to America.
Fair point, Emma?
I think Trump has been demonised, broadly speaking. I don't mean by Matthew. And I also think that what J.D. Vance says in a private text message to a friend when he's trying to work out his views about a particular prominent political figure is by the by. The fact that J.D. Vance has chosen to run as his vice president candidate shows that he obviously doesn't think that about Donald Trump. So I think that's a sort of slightly ludicrous point to make. That's not the same as David Lammy's comments, because the point is that it's about the culture on which a democracy needs to rest. And the reality is that in the States, and also to a degree in the United Kingdom, the rug is being pulled out from underneath democracy because the culture that supports it is being eroded, and it's being eroded by those people who demonise their opponents, not as being wrong, but as being evil.
OK. Let me just fast forward a year when Lammy made these comments. A year later, he called Trump a serial liar and a cheat who was also deluded, dishonest, xenophobic, narcissistic, and no friend of Britain. Is this the language of a foreign secretary?
He wasn't foreign secretary at the time, but all those comments are accurate about Donald Trump. And, you know, I hear Emma saying that Trump has been demonised. He's demonised himself. This is a guy who, despite losing, 20 different legal cases about the veracity of the election result, still tried to overturn it. That's the stuff of banana republics. And that's what we'll have again if Trump comes back to power.
Lee, I just want to make a quick point, if I may, right? Because as I've been absolutely clear all the way through, what happened to Trump was a disgrace. It was an act of evil. We don't know what the motives are, but what that man did, by the way, in taking another life as well, was an act of evil of that shooter. Let's rewind a little bit, because you're rewinding to David Lammy. What did Trump say after the husband of Nancy Pelosi was brutally attacked in their own home? It could have died. What did he say? He mocked him. He said, let me say what he said. He said, how's her husband? How's he doing, by the way? That is a sick remark. Donald Trump says the most appalling things, and in my very strong opinion, and it matters not a jot because I don't have a vote, but you're asking my opinion, it would be a terrible mistake for the American people to re-elect him.
So a lot of whataboutery here, Emma.
Well, you can accuse Donald Trump of hypocrisy too, that's fine. You can criticise Donald Trump. But I think if you're going to talk about a banana republic, the kind of... you know, Matthew said, we don't know what his motivations are. Well, we know enough. We know his motivations were to assassinate a president. And a country where political candidates, people as prominent as Donald Trump, are threatened with assassination, and also that those who go to their rallies not only may have their livelihoods destroyed if they're photographed there, but also might lose their lives. I think that that is very, very serious. And I think that criticisms of Donald Trump, fine, but it pales in comparison to the seriousness of this.
But you know what, Emma? I'm 64, and I've never seen an election in this country where either Labour or Conservative have challenged the veracity of the result. That's what happened with Donald Trump, and that's the risk he
Apart from the referendum result of 2016, where they wanted
people
a second.
challenged it. Some people, not me included, thought there should be another vote because that was their way. That's their way of doing democracy. Why should it be a binding vote forever? I wasn't on that side. I thought we should listen to the people and that we should get on with it. That's very different. Let's be crystal clear about this. From Donald Trump saying that he was robbed of that election, that was a very, very dangerous thing to do.
Fine, but there were Democrats also when Donald Trump won who felt that the election had been stolen somehow, and we're talking about things like Russian collusion. The same thing with Brexit. So it's fine to criticise Trump, but you know the Democrats also when Donald Trump won, claimed that the election had been, some of the prominent Democrats claimed the election had been stolen. They claimed that it was Russian collusion. The same thing here with Brexit. So, you know, it's not the same, exactly the same thing in the UK as it is in the US. And I think it's a mistake to try and project their politics onto our own. But we do see some shadows of that here. Yep. But I think, again, Matthew's point is entirely besides the point. I think it's just detracting from the very seriousness the seriousness of what's happened in the States.
Right, yeah, I think I've got to draw it to a close now, Bill. Our time is up. Right. Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Matthew. Thanks, Emma. I need some of this now. Some drink of this, gosh. Coming up next, we're going back in the day with Olympic athlete Derek Redmond.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Now, we've got a story and a half to tell you and bring you now. Our very own GB News political correspondent, who we love very much, Catherine Foster, joins us in the studio, and she's smiling, but she wasn't smiling for the past few days.
Two of her sons, Matthew and Andrew, were reported missing in Bali.
I got a text from a friend saying, can you give us a call, a bit worried about them. Then spoke to a girl they'd befriended who was in Sweden, but they'd met on their travels. And she told me that they'd gone up the mountain. By the time I found out, they'd been missing for 30 hours. They'd gone up the mountain on the Tuesday night, British time. This was the Thursday morning, without a guide. And they'd told her it was really hard. And she told them to turn back, but they hadn't. And they'd sent screenshots from this app with this trail that they were following on the app, screenshots of the app in case there was a problem, and a Snapchat of a Matthew avatar at the top. And she said, I know they made it to the top because I could see that his phone had nearly died. But the trail had actually closed many years ago. So the app, we will need to make sure that that gets taken off the app. But, you know, technology saved them in the end because it was the screenshots and it was the messages that they'd sent, but they should never have been without a guide.
But what were you doing during those 30 hours that Mum couldn't, when the phone died and Mum couldn't get in touch? Where were you? What were you up to?
Well, we were trying to figure out the best course of action, because it started to pour with rain. The amount of rain created a river, like a stream.
Yeah.
We were like, oh,
yeah,
let's follow the stream downhill, and then the sun set, and we just had to, like, sleep in the bushes in the jungle.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Going back in the day now with former Olympic athlete Derek Redmond. Welcome to the show, Derek. I remember seeing you on our TV screens in
92, yeah.
92, Barcelona.
Yep. Barcelona, yeah.
Historic scenes there. But let's go a little bit further back in your life. What got you into athletics?
Just a love of running around and jumping. I mean, the story that I always tell people is for the first 6 years, I thought my name was Will You Walk? Because I just used to run and jump around the house. Yeah. And I think the safest place for me was on the sports field. And I got the opportunity to go down to my local athletics club, which was Milton Keynes Athletics Club. And, yeah, I had to go. I had no idea what I wanted to do, so tried everything. Yeah. Long jump, high jump, triple jump, shot put, sprinting, middle distance. And then we found out that I was pretty bad at long jump, high jump, you know, all those other events. Yeah. But I was quick.
You know, that's interesting what you just said. initially, because there are a lot of kids that are hypoactive these days, that's jumping about, running around and shouting and screaming, and some parents or some people, some of these so-called specialists, are very quick to label these young kids without having a condition like ADHD or whatever. But really, you know, they need something to do, don't they? They need to get out, get involved in sports or music or whatever.
Absolutely. I think in this day and age, sometimes we're too quick, or we teachers and people are too quick to label people. They've got this, they've got that, they've got this, because they haven't got the time or don't want to take the time to really look into what the issue could be. And a lot of the time, those youngsters are not being stimulated, and that could be from an educational point of view, or it could be from an exercise point of view, from a physical point of view. And I think they should be given those opportunities to at least cross those out if they're not that before they actually continue.
I mean, I believe that, because when I was at school, especially our junior school, we had proper sports days where you did running, you did hurdles, you did all sorts of activities. And I see this nonsense now where some schools have these non-competitive. What's all that about?
I know. I've been through it with my kids. I've got 4 kids, and they've all left school now. But same sort of thing, going to non-competitive sports days. I mean, what is that about? You know, it's just crazy. I'm waiting for the first non-competitive Olympics, and I'm making a comeback.
I'm of the mind, and I say this whenever I can, that I believe that everybody is good at something. You just got to find what you're good at.
I'm exactly the same. And when it comes to sport, I mean, I get parents coming up to me and saying, "Oh, do you know what, Derek? Meet my little son. He's, little 5-year-old David here, and he's going to be the next world javelin champion." He's 5 years old. You don't even know if javelin is something he's going to do, wants to do it. So I think, like you just said, from a sports point of view, if you can expose your kids to as many sports as possible, there's a good chance they will find something that they'll become quite proficient at, and if they're really lucky and talented, it might be something to...
When did you first realise to yourself that you was quick?
When I started sprinting, when I joined my club, I was quite quick, and as I went through the years, I was always the quickest in my class, quickest in the school. Athletics clubs, then you kind of meet other quickest kids in their classes and schools from other classes and schools. But for me, my life changed when I was about 15. So up until then, I ran 100s and 200s. And then when I was 15, running for my club, we'd moved from Milton Keynes to Northampton. I ran in a 400 because the guy who was supposed to run the 400 didn't show up. Wow. And it was a club's competition, and even if you finished 8th, you got 1 point for your club, and at the end of the day, the club with the most points won. And I ended up winning the race. I finished 3rd in the 100, 3rd in the 200, won the 400, and I broke the county record. And
that's a sliding door moment, isn't it? It's like...
Massively.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, sporting heroes?
2 of them. I've got 3 heroes in life. My dad, God rest his soul, Daley Thompson, and Michael Jordan.
Why Daley Thompson?
Daley Thompson, what a man. Had the privilege of training with him for a few years. Just his mental attitude. I learned so much from that guy. It was untrue. I've never met a more competitive human being in my life. That guy would compete to eat a bowl of baked beans with a toothpick. I mean, anything. He would compete at absolutely anything. So he was really good to learn from. Michael Jordan, I mean, he was just, head and shoulders, pardon the pun, above everybody. He was a giant, literally. So those are the 3.
So you like your music as well?
Yeah.
Tell me about your musical heroes.
Musical heroes, that's a good one. Oh, wow.
Desert Island Disc now, you've got a couple of tunes to pick on that. You've got 2 records to take with you. Which would you take? Tough one.
Real tough one. Possibly a Luther Vandross track. I couldn't even tell you which one at the moment because there's just so many. Massive Luther Vandross fan, and if I had to pick, I'd possibly go with a Sade track as well. Unless she was available to go on the island with, then that would be cool. But no,
I can't say that. You can't say that.
No, it's a tough one. There's so much that I like. But I definitely think Luther and possibly a Sade track.
So outside your athletics, you are involved in a couple of good causes, charities that you like to promote. Can you tell me about those, please, Derek?
So Rainbow's Children's Hospice, which is based up in Leicestershire, and they sort of look after youngsters with life-threatening illnesses, I think is the best way to put that. And the other one, which is, I say closer to home, but a kind of an obvious one, which is Sports Aid, which they help raise money for young sportsmen and women. And I think we're, umpteen days away from the Olympics starting. There's a good chance, a minimum of 50 to 60% of athletes that win medals will be sports aid recipients.
So, in your sporting career, what was the highest moment?
I guess winning a world championship, becoming world champion. Not many people can say, you're a world champion, so that's got to be the highest.
Wow. But you was buzzing for days, weren't you?
Oh, months, years. Still talk about it now.
Yeah. Still dining out on it?
Still dining out on it, absolutely, yeah.
That's amazing. What about low points?
Obvious one, Barcelona would be the lowest. Didn't get
How do you
much
get over
that.
something like that?
Do you get over it? I don't think you ever get over it. You learn to come to terms with it. I remember being on a show with Mark Dolan must have been 2021 for the. And I explained to him it was the first Olympics, and I was being totally honest. It was the first Olympics where I didn't feel any bitterness towards British athletes winning medals.
Wow.
Up until then, I always did. There was always that little bit of bitterness from me towards our own team because I didn't get my medal. And I really believe in it. And then mine was 1992, and we're talking 2021. And that's how long it kind of took. And it was the first games. I remember saying to my wife when I was watching, I said, "Do you know what? I actually feel good about the guys and girls."
Was you a good boy at school?
Next question. Can we do that yes or no? Okay.
Let's put it this way, Jake. What would you have done if you wouldn't have been a fast runner?
Who knows what I would have done. Let's put it this way. At primary school, one of the teachers was my mum's good friend, and she was in the, what do they call it, one of the rooms where the teachers have dinner and goodness knows what. And another teacher turned around and said, that Derek Redmond's going to end up in prison.
Really?
So, I was,
lively.
Misunderstood. That's what I'll go.
We've had Fatima on this programme. We've had Chris Akabusi, it's great. I mean, he actually went in the army at 16.
Yes, he did.
I think he'd been in care as well.
He had,
And again, athletics was an escape for him.
Absolutely. And do you know what? I mean, I could be biased, but it doesn't have to be athletics. Any sport that you get involved in, I think, can really mould you into a decent human being to fit in society. And you learn so much from competing in sport, and I don't need to list all the things, but there's so much, characteristics that you can, and behaviours that you can learn from the world of sport.
Would you do anything different?
Yeah, not pull a hamstring. To be honest with you, if I know what I know now, back then, yes, there will be things that I do different. I overtrained. There's no two ways about it. I overtrained. My coach would say that to me, and that was no reflection on him, by the way, because there would be times when he wasn't standing with me and I would be doing other sessions and just doing too much. So I think I would go for more of quality rather than quantity. But back then, as far as I was concerned, the more I did, the better I got. And the more I was doing, there's a good chance I was doing more than my opposition.
That's brilliant, mate. Absolutely, absolute inspiration. Wonderful. And you had to go home, crack one of them cigars open, get a bit of single malt and chill for the weekend.
I certainly will do that.
Thanks, Derek.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, buddy.
Thank you.
Coming up next, we've got right versus left. Don't miss that one.
Good evening, welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Humid and cloudy through Saturday, but as we head into Sunday, it's looking mostly dry but considerably fresher than today. That's because weather fronts are moving in from the north and west, and behind that we've got much cooler air arriving through Saturday. Before then, though, a humid night to come for much of England and Wales, as well as some eastern areas of Scotland too. Quite a lot of cloud building in from the west, but across the eastern areas it should stay clear and dry through much of the night. And temperatures here not falling much below 17 or 18 degrees. Further north and west, though, slightly fresher. We've already got that fresher air arriving into the far north and west by tomorrow morning. So after a spell of rain overnight across the Western Isles, it will slowly start to brighten up through the day. The rain not arriving to eastern areas of Scotland till later on in the day, but a wet start to the day across Northern Ireland. Temperatures only around 15 degrees here first thing. North East England, a dry start to the day. Much of eastern and central areas of England will see some sunshine first thing, but that sunshine will turn hazier as the day goes on, and that's because this weather front will continue its journey eastwards through the day. Now, it does bring a risk of some very heavy downpours, particularly across western areas through the day. It's unlikely to arrive into the east until at least Saturday evening, so you should stay dry across eastern areas through much of Saturday, but it's still going to feel quite humid out there, and temperatures across East Anglia in particular could still reach the high 20s. By contrast, across western areas, we're down into the high teens, so a very different feel by the end of the day on Saturday, and that feel will continue into Sunday. Once the rain clears slowly away from the east, actually there's going to be quite a lot of brightness around on Sunday. It should stay dry for most of us, and temperatures will be much more comfortable, much closer to average. However, looking ahead to the start of next week, there's the return of some more unsettled weather with temperatures below average. Bye-bye.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
As time passes,
she could have saved Storm.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So it's time for Right versus Left, and this week we've got Bill Rammell, former Labour MP and Minister, and we've got the lovely writer and broadcaster Emma Webb, soon to be married Emma Webb. What's your married name going to be? That's the secret. Look, we've had the King's speech this week, Bill. You've probably sat through many of these royal addresses, and a lot in there, lots of bills, but is it any different from a Conservative King's speech? It didn't appear so to me.
I think hugely different. I mean, 40 bills compared to about 20 under the Tories for the last few years. Why? Because the Tories were so divided, they couldn't bring forward any legislation for fear of losing it. So a real sense of momentum and change, and I think a huge difference from the Tory party. You know, the commitment to house building with the mechanisms to deliver 1.5 million houses, commitments to workers' rights, commitments to renationalise the railways. None of those would ever happen under a Tory government in thousands of years. You know, it's real change, and all of them overlaid with a determination to turbocharge the economy, because without economic growth, we're not going to be able to deliver for the public services in the way that we need.
Emma?
There are obvious points of continuity with the Conservative policies, but I mean, just simply the smoking ban is one example. And actually, many people have pointed out that there is a bit of continuity there also with the house building, the kind of top-down planning reform.
But the Tories never had targets, you know, because they backed off the issue and weren't delivering.
A bit like London, Bill, with Mayor Khan. He's not built many houses, has he?
Well, he's improved during his term in office. And what you've got to do, and this is a difficult issue, but I think you need to say there have to be local housing targets, and if housing proposals come forward and they meet the local criteria, then they can't be rejected at a local level. Without that, you're not going to get the change, and you're not going to get the houses. But we already have that,
Bill. We have local plans in place
but you haven't got statutory targets for local councils, and even if you've got a local plan in place, you still find many housing applications being rejected because of local opposition. I'm sorry, if we're going to deliver the homes that are needed, then you need to override that local opposition.
It is. To be honest, he makes a fair point, does Bill? I mean, in my inbox, housing is a massive issue. I get one off saying, I want a house, I can't get a council house, I can't buy a house, I can't afford rent. And the other half emailing and complaining about a new housing development being built at the end of their garden. So it's a fine balance between not upsetting everybody in your community and providing the houses that their children need.
Don't build ugly things. I think people will be happy if you're building towns like Poundbury, where people actually want to live, rather than these kind of hideous flat-pack commuter towns and desecrating the countryside with ugly architecture. I think people would feel differently if those houses were beautiful, and if they were building maybe, you know, a new village on the edge of large cities, or, you know, something that is has some kind of longevity to it, rather than these horrible.
But this though, I'm thinking about this, Bill, as a politician, being a selfish politician, thinking about campaigning. Next year we've got county elections, local elections. This is going to be a big problem for Labour in places like Nottinghamshire, where I live. because the opposition parties were campaigning on you're building on Greenbelt everywhere.
Yeah, and one of the problems is that MPs of all parties will never say no to their constituents in terms of supporting their opposition to housing development. But, you know, there's a silent majority that needs liberating. When I was the MP for Harlow, I led a cross-party coalition in favour of a big housing development north of Harlow. Huge opposition, or what seemed like it. We then did a poll through the local council and 64% of people supported the proposals we were putting forward. Yeah. But it's the opposition which is very noisy and very vociferous. Yeah. And the planning bill that the government is implemented gives the mechanism to be able to overcome that.
Let's talk about something else, Emma, in the King's speech. Talking about this Border Security Command. I mean, whatever that means, I don't know. But Starmer does keep saying he's going to smash the gangs. He's like a Dalek whizzing around. I will smash the gangs. Yeah. I will smash the gangs. What does that mean?
He doesn't really ever show his working out, does he? No. He says we're going, and it's actually the same with this. We're going to do this, but it's not entirely clear exactly how it's going to avoid all of the challenges that the Conservative government faced. You know, it's not necessarily the case that the Conservatives just didn't want to do the things that they promised to the public that they would do. It's just that they weren't willing to take the necessary steps. And I don't see that Keir Starmer is going to be willing to take those necessary steps either. With something like the NHS, Labour are in a different position because they do have, I think, a better chance of reforming the NHS just because it works better politically for them. But with something like immigration, particularly given the fact that some of their MPs are still quite far on the left, I think that they're not going to be able to take the necessary steps like leaving the ECHR. And I think reality is going to come down hard on them soon. If they don't show that by the end of this year, not by the end of this year, but by the end of their first year, that they actually have put in place the things that can actually be effective, I think that the public will just entirely lose hope. And I think immigration is going to be a sort of...
They're on thin ice, they're on thin ice. They've got to deliver quickly.
I don't think we are. The critique from the right is that the Labour Party is not serious about tackling immigration, and we are. And we were the last time we were in government. And I'm not going to say we got everything right, but I was a Foreign Office Minister meeting on a weekly basis with my counterpart in the Home Office to work assiduously to drive down asylum numbers, and we did it from 2005 to 2010. So if you're serious, you can do it. And, we've already increased by 1/3 the number of police officers who are going to be located within Europol, because whatever you think about Brexit and our relationship with the European Union, without cooperation, judicially and in terms of police, we can't smash these gangs and we can't drive the numbers down.
I think the Conservatives knew that too, and come on, it was Tony Blair who flung the doors open to immigration in the first place. The idea that Labour have some kind of objectively better record in immigration is just simply not true.
Well, it is. Net migration is 3 times higher today compared to when we left office. And yes, through the expansion of the European Union, we brought people into the country who worked hard and contributed. But what we've seen since 2010 is a complete loss of control of the system, and we need to get that back.
I agree with that. I just don't necessarily think that Labour are going to be any better at doing it than the Conservatives were.
OK, guys, right, this is time for the yes or no quiz. You've done this before, haven't you, Emma? You've done it as well, Bill, haven't you? Let's go for it. 5 questions. You can only give a yes or no answer. I know it's incredibly difficult. Your old friend, Stephen Pound, by the way, he gets it wrong every single week, but anyway, he's back on in a few weeks.
He speaks very highly of you, Lee.
Does he really?
Yeah.
Very good. Bill, was it a good King's speech?
Yes.
Emma?
No.
Will Trump win the next US election?
Yes.
No.
Bill, should government ban smoking?
Yes.
No. No.
Sorry, Emma, you put 2 no's in there. It's got to be a no. I can't give you that.
That's on my head.
That's quite harsh. Number 4, should David Lammy apologise for previous comments he made about Donald Trump?
No.
No.
And will Starmer survive a full 5 years?
No.
Yes, emphatically.
Wrong answer. Yes, emphatically. So that's 4. I mean, it's not that difficult, is it, a yes or no quiz? Obviously it is. It's a yes or no. Sorry, viewers at home. Poor performance from both of you. Do you want to come back on one, Emma? One of the questions?
Just say no once.
No, I mean, it's interesting what you the question about David Lammy. I slipped that one in. I actually agree with you. I agree with you. I think, he's made comments in the past. I've made comments in the past. it's in the past, it's gone. You know, I think he should move forward. And when he meets the guy, he should shake his hand and say, you know, this is what I'm about, this is what I want a good relationship, etc. Bill?
Absolutely. You know, I mean, Trump has said awful things about this country and about our governments, even conservative governments. But, you know, I desperately hope Trump isn't elected. But if he is, he will be the president of, you know, our major strategic partner, and we have to get on with them and we have to work with them, and I'm sure David and Keir will be doing that.
It's true though, isn't it, Emma?
I don't like this culture of forced penitence and making people apologise or encouraging them to apologise, unless it's something, you know, I'm sure there can be exceptions to that. But I think it is relevant information. It can inform what we think of David Lammy, and also I think it will inform what the Americans think of this government. And J.D. Vance's comments about Islamism were interesting. But this comments like that from David Lammy are not going to help diplomatically.
They're not, no. I mean, I've made some comments in the past you might be aware of where I've been told to apologise. I haven't. I've doubled down because I generally thought I was right in what I was saying. And
you shouldn't apologise ever for something that you think
if you feel you're right, you should stand by your comments. I always think that, because if you do apologise, especially me and my politics, if I apologise, the right would disown me and the left would just kill me.
It's also about respecting other people's consciences. You know, people can hold abhorrent positions as far as you're concerned.
But I'm going to give you both some harsh
words.
words now. That was a dreadful performance, Emma. It was poor Bill.
You can't get the guests.
You just can't get the staff. I mean, we need to pay a bit more. Producer, you listening? Can we pay a bit more and get some proper guests on next week? Maybe get the pub boy Matthew Stadland back. He's he doesn't
good
cost
value
much.
For money.
Yeah, but look, coming up next we've got Last Orders with Kezia Noble.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
An employment tribunal has found that a senior lawyer telling a legal secretary that she looked nice created an intimidating environment and made her feel violated.
Well, she's won her sexual harassment suit, so is saying someone looks nice acceptable in the workplace anymore?
Well, joining us now to debate this is political commentator Christine Hamilton, who thinks it should be, and author and journalist Rebecca Reid, who thinks making comments like these are unnecessary. OK, Rebecca, why is it unnecessary to tell your colleague they look nice?
Well, how somebody looks at work shouldn't be particularly important or relevant. But I think my issue here is that it's used as a sort of dismissive way to make women feel silly for complaining about things. Like, oh, it's just saying you look nice. Why does it matter? But we all know there are different ways of saying things. And if you are an older man in a position of power, looking a woman up and down and saying, oh, you look nice, in a lascivious tone, which, as far as we know, is quite possibly what happened, that's not acceptable. That's not workplace appropriate, and it would make somebody feel uncomfortable.
Christine, she's right, Rebecca, isn't she? It depends how it's said. If you've got someone who's sleazy saying, oh, you look nice, you're going to be a bit off-put, aren't you?
Yes, we don't know whether this was said in a lascivious tone or not. And as far as I can see, this particular case, the boss went too far and he did a lot of other things as well. But what worries me is that the tribunal has ruled that just saying you look nice could be included as sexual harassment. Now, I think that is ridiculous.
Realistically, women don't make these accusations for fun. Women don't make these accusations to be difficult. They do it because they've been made to feel unsafe or unable to work in a certain place.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way.
Might be cold in this studio.
That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Time for last orders at the bar, joined by the very lovely Kezia Noble. You're a dating expert, like a guru. You advise men on how to pull women. What's all that about? I mean, why can't men go out in a pub these days, have a couple of shandies and go over to a woman at the bar and offer to buy her a drink? Why can't they do that?
Because men are just very nervous now, and they've been over-relying on dating apps, so their banter's really bad. So they might be good at texting and, you know, quite good and, you know, making contact online. But in real life, because they've sort of neglected, you know, their banter, their chat, their body language, they feel that they're too nervous, they're too rusty almost to go and speak to a woman.
Don't you just feel like sometimes saying, get a grip, man, get out there and you know, be brave, go and talk to that woman?
Well, we do that. I mean, it is something that we say, which is like man up. At the end of the day, man up and go speak to her, because women are attracted to confident men. And just by you approaching her in a confident way, that is automatically going to be attractive. But it does take a little bit more than that, I'm afraid, because some of these guys have never approached a woman. So just saying, go approach, go speak to her, OK, fine, but what do I say? So we give opening lines also.
Is it a good idea to, when you approach a woman, to compliment her straight away, say, you're looking beautiful?
No.
OK.
You want to, first of all, give a compliment which is more about something that she's worked on, like maybe she's picked an outfit, something that maybe it's the way she carries herself, something that most guys don't choose. You know, most guys would just say, you're beautiful, which is a bit generic. It can apply to a lot of women. But if you pick something a bit more specific, like, you know, I like the way that you said that, or I like your sense of humour, or your smile, then when you started like engaging and talking and building up, you know, some conversation, then you can say something such as, you know, you're absolutely gorgeous, by the way. Or one that I like is, now I know why I'm attracted to you. And then you don't tell her.
Oh, OK. So, I mean, back in the day, I'm a little bit older than you, but back in the day when I used to go out with my friends on the pool, I had a couple of mates who were very successful, and I had a couple of mates who weren't successful, and they're probably watching this right now, but they had different techniques. And one technique we spoke about earlier, which is a little bit, well, I'll be honest with you, I've got one particular mate, and he will be watching this. He, if we went clubbing, he'd stand outside the women's toilets for an hour, 2 hours, and I used to say to him, why are you doing that? He said, well, at one stage, some stage during the evening, every woman will go to the toilet and I will ask everyone for the number. And he would come out with 2 or 3 numbers at the end of the night. And that was a numbers game for him. That's how he did it.
It's numbers game. If you just speak to a lot of people, eventually one's going to say yes. But I find that my clients, they don't want to just go for any woman. Like, they have... Like,
and they shouldn't be hanging around toilets, should they?
Or I tell them go to the smoking area. That's even if they don't smoke, they always have a packet of cigarettes with them. And then so many people have met their future wife in the smoking area. Because it's just a different vibe to when you're in the nightclub or the bar. It's a place where everyone starts talking to each other and starts vibing. It's just another little tip.
Good point. I suppose when they're having a fag, they're actually in a good mood then, aren't they?
They've got their hit.
Yeah, they've got their hit, yeah. Any do's or don'ts then?
Oh, God, so many. OK, well...
what's the worst one? What's the big no-no?
Just don't be the nice guy, OK? And the nice guy doesn't mean that you shouldn't be the great guy. You know, be fun, be like a kind, caring person. I'm not saying that, but nice guy is like the filtered, watered-down version of yourself. You know, the guy that's just kind of like not bold, just nods his head in agreement with everything that she says. And it's just basically very passive and just hoping that he gets selected at some point by her. Yes, you've got to go in there as the selector, choosing the woman.
Yes, alpha male. What's the best chat-up line and what's the worst?
OK, so you can actually say anything, but if you do it in a way, you can get away with it and it can work. So if you said something like, you know, think of the worst chat-up line possible.
I don't know.
If I was a letter in the alphabet, I'd be you.
Get your coat you've pulled?
Yeah, something like that. Something terrible. But if you say it in a very kind of like playful way, and then you say to after, that was really bad, wasn't it? Actually, you'll be showing her your sense of humour and that you can have a laugh. So there's too much emphasis on what's the actual line I approach.
So I was out one night with my mates many years, decades ago, and my mate says, watch this. He went up to this woman and he says, are you married? She says, no. He says, do you want to be? And she threw a pint pot over him, a beer. And that was the end of that conversation. So,
none of my students have ever experienced anything like that. So maybe she was drunk.
Drunk, maybe. Yeah. It's a nasty thing to do, isn't it?
It
anyway, look, we're behind the bar, Kezia. We're going to do on the pull. I'll give you a pint pot. I think we're going to use that. Have you ever poured a pint before? So you've got about 30 seconds to pull a pint. and then we're going to mark you out of 10.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, here we go. And I can tell you've never
Can I have
done
any tips? No?
No. Oh, look at that. It's not very good. Very frothy.
Oh, OK, so I need to make it harder. OK, got it.
Well, look at
I've
this.
never done it.
Hey, you never poured a pint, it tells, and then plonk it on the bar so the camera can see it.
Looks like a milkshake.
That, guys, is a shocker. That is.
I'm a white wine girl.
I've been doing this show a year.
That's actually the worst one ever, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I've been doing this show a year, and that is awful. I've done a few of these, so I might be a little bit better. Hassan is behind the camera, so he's over there behind the camera. He's getting pretty good at this. And I'll have a go.
Can I have another go?
Do you want another go?
Yeah. Now I know what to do.
OK. Go on then.
OK.
And while you're pulling one...
I've noticed you do an angle. OK.
So if a bloke come up to you in a bar and says, do you want a drink, love?
Yeah.
What would you say?
Oh, I'd say
And he was physically
I want a
attractive.
white wine.
Yeah.
Oh, it's physically attractive,
Yeah.
yes. I want a white wine immediately. OK, right, here we go.
Yeah, go.
Watch this. Watch it. Watch what I'm doing.
There you go. That's much better, Kez. It's still a little bit frothy, love. I think you need more tilt.
More tilt.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Right, it's Friday night.
Better. That is better.
It is better. It's still a shocker, though. It's better. It's Friday night. There'll probably be some blokes watching this show right now. They've just had a shave. They've put their aftershave on. They've got the chinos on. They've got the new shirt they've just bought. They're going out on the pull. Advice. They're going out now, Kezia. What are you going to say to them?
Be proactive. If you see a good-looking woman, don't wait around, don't hover. Women don't want that. Go up to her, be bold, approach her, and just say to her, hey, what's the occasion tonight? Because women go out in a group usually, or 2 or 3 of them. Say, hey, what's the occasion?
And what about body language to look for in a woman? Is it too, and when she flicks her hair looking at you, she's...
Oh, yeah, that's like a green light. You should go up to her, but you shouldn't just limit yourself to whether she's got the big smile on her face. She might have what we call resting bitchy face. So,
what's that?
Yeah, it's this.
Yeah.
And so no one will approach a woman like that, but she's just thinking, she's just resting.
Yeah,
And you should approach any woman that you want and just don't limit yourself.
Yeah. So it is a numbers game, isn't it? There's
Well, yeah, but, you know, it's technique. No, there is technique.
There's a Jack for every Jill, I think.
You mean like a lid for every pot? Is that the same thing?
Yeah, there's somebody for everybody.
Well, yeah,
almost.
But that's a nice story that a lot of guys believe, and then they come to me when they're like 50 years old going, I didn't find my Jill.
Really?
Yeah, and then we help them.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
So what sort of success rate have you got?
100%.
They all end up
All of them. I have video testimonials, everything, all on YouTube. Hundreds of video testimonials from guys of all ages from across the world who've done my courses.
So if there's some people out there that want your help, what do they do?
They go to my website, kezia-noble.com.
And within a year, you will be married. That is great. Thanks for that, Kezia. Lovely. Can you suck that in 30 seconds?
I've never drank beer.
No, never. Well, I'm going to sip now. That's On the Pull with Kezia Noble. Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining me on Lee Anderson's Real World. It's been another cracking show. More of the same next week. But coming up next, we've got Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Mark, what's occurring?
Lee, what a brilliant show. Well, we pick up the baton at 8 o'clock. It is Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. The weekend starts here. Bring your own drinks and you'll need it because, phew, what a scorcher. On tonight's show, has Nigel Farage let down his own voters by flying to the US, or is he proving what a real friend looks like? And is Sir Keir Starmer proving his critics wrong and smashing it as Prime Minister? We'll debate that next.
Warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Humid and cloudy through Saturday, but as we head into Sunday, it's looking mostly dry but considerably fresher than today. That's because weather fronts are moving in from the north and west, and behind that we've got much cooler air arriving through Saturday. Before then, though, a humid night to come for much of England and Wales, as well as some eastern areas of Scotland too. Quite a lot of cloud building in from the west, but across the eastern areas it should stay clear and dry through much of the night. And temperatures here not falling much below 17 or 18 degrees. Further north and west, though, slightly fresher. We've already got that fresher air arriving into the far north and west by tomorrow morning. So after a spell of rain overnight across the Western Isles, it will slowly start to brighten up through the day. The rain not arriving to eastern areas of Scotland till later on in the day, but a wet start to the day across Northern Ireland. Temperatures only around 15 degrees here first thing. North East England, a dry start to the day. Much of eastern and central areas of England will see some sunshine first thing, but that sunshine will turn hazier as the day goes on, and that's because this weather front will continue its journey eastwards through the day. Now, it does bring a risk of some very heavy downpours, particularly across western areas through the day. It's unlikely to arrive into the east until at least Saturday evening, so you should stay dry across eastern areas through much of Saturday, but it's still going to feel quite humid out there, and temperatures across East Anglia in particular could still reach the high 20s. By contrast, across western areas, we're down into the high teens, so a very different feel by the end of the day on Saturday, and that feel will continue into Sunday. Once the rain clears slowly away from the east, actually there's going to be quite a lot of brightness around on Sunday. It should stay dry for most of us, and temperatures will be much more comfortable, much closer to average. However, looking ahead to the start of next week, there's the return of some more unsettled weather with temperatures below average. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.